So maybe we can start and let the guys join at their own convenience. So
Sure.
first of all, a very good morning, and hope all of you are keeping safe and following all the precautions. I'm very happy that you guys have taken this effort on a Sunday morning and to sort of come out here and learn something new. Okay, so first of all, let's do one thing. Can we have a unmute all? Is that possible, Vijay?
Yeah. Guys can unmute themselves.
Okay, great. This is what I wanted to hear. Just unmute all. Say good morning.
Good morning.
Great. All right. Let me hear
Morning.
new noises. That's good, I see. Okay, few more, please.
Come on, guys. Good morning, all.
Good morning. I just want to
Good
see
morning,
that you are
everyone.
Good
not out
morning.
of bed. Okay, great.
Good
Morning.
morning.
Good morning. Few more, please. Okay, great. Now all of you can
Good
go
morning,
mute.
all.
Okay. Now let's go mute.
Yeah, guys, you all can
Excellent.
mute yourself now.
Great. So now there is some energy. So I know you guys have not just come out of bed, but already prepared. Okay, great. So can you please mute yourself? I have one more exercise. Okay, great. Sounds good. And now for another 2 minutes, just close your eyes, right? And slowly start to focus on your breath. Okay, I'm not endorsing here Modi or Baba Ramdev, but I do want you to have a complete focus on the session because what we will talk is going to maybe change your career. So can you just close your eye and just focus on your breath for 2 minutes? There'll be too many thoughts coming in. Just try and see if you can just focus on your breath. I know definitely there are a lot of background noises. All right. Felt some difference? So this is a famous technique which Daniel Goleman, who is author of some of the great books like Emotional Intelligence, uses to bring back the focus in the work you do, right? And I'll maybe talk about a bit more. Why is having an extreme focus when you sit down and do something is important? Okay, and I hope nobody went back to bed. Okay, all right, great. So if you feel good, let me just share my screen. I'll show you something, but I'll make sure it's not too boring in terms of just presenting some stuff. Let me know when you guys are able to see my screen. And feel free to stop me in between. Okay. All right. So I think today's session, as I was given the understanding, we will discuss about how to build a portfolio project, right? And the focus here is specifically on data science, but feel free to comment or think about or improvise on whatever I say to, let's say, if you want to apply this in your own area of work as well. So I made sure that whatever I'm saying and going to present today is not just specific to data science, but is applicable quite widely to all the other domains as well. So this is something I do a lot. So I am telling you in a very nutshell what I am, right? So whenever there is this platform that you get, and in many of these platforms, you have to talk about what you do the best, right? And today's world, in the world of Twitter that we live, it's not about writing a one-page essay about who you are, right? But being able to talk about as your in order to make your brand a better, your personal brand a better, to get it a better reach, you have to be able to describe what you really do in maybe just 2 to 3 words, right? So for me, it's about this. I'm a mentor, I am an author, I'm a researcher, I think I'm a problem solver, and I love venturing into new technology. So I also call myself technologist, right? And how did I really build this portfolio? To be able to called author is not just about writing 1 or 2 blogs in Medium or LinkedIn, right? What does it really need? What does it really demand from you to become an author, right? So we'll talk about a lot, but if you want to have a very detailed understanding of what I do, please visit my LinkedIn profile and you will see some more there. Okay, so this was the first starter. Griatom gave me like, can you answer this question, Karthik? So how to build a portfolio project? By now, I assume a lot of you would have done something or the other in your own area, or if you are starting out in data science, you would have done something already. So before I go a little more deeper here, uh, first of all, uh, how many of you, or if you can just say in one word, are you new to data science, or are you in data science and practicing it for some time now? Just say yes if you are new, or no. Okay, a lot of people are new here. Okay, great. So that gives me some pulse. So here is what I'll take you through today to sort of tell you what a portfolio project really means. So, right. So, uh, for any industry, it's not just for data science that we are here talking about. Working on a real world problem is one of the most important traits anybody would look at when, let's say, they are talking to you, or let's say if I have to make a decision of hiring you. What kind of problems have you solved? So in the data science world, you probably by now heard of platforms like Kaggle or the UCI machine learning repository. So these repositories contain a little bit of a benchmarking data set. So when I say benchmarking, data sets on which some of these algorithms were proven to give you, let's say, some X percentage of accuracy or some X percentage of precision. So from those benchmarking data sets, you can really get a sense of saying, okay, let's say tomorrow I'm coming out with a new machine learning algorithm which I've designed myself. I would say, okay, on the benchmark data set, this is how well my model does. So there are a lot of benchmarking data sets in the machine learning repository maintained by UCI. So on top of it, a lot of people for the very first time when they start their journey in data science, they typically feel that's the better place to start with. So data sets like Iris, right, data sets on bank campaigns, and many more like those, and data sets on diabetes. So many such data sets are available. So if you want to start and see how do we apply some simple machine learning algorithms. But as you mature in your what you call, and today we are not talking about how do you first, okay, how do you get started with machine learning, right? So we are talking about how do you get a very good portfolio project. So that's when platforms like Kaggle comes handy. So as you may be aware, Kaggle is a platform where a lot of competitions are hosted. and problems are not are not just a data set. Here, a problem means a company or an organization have really thought through what kind of problem they want to solve using data. They have formulated the data, the problem very well. They have created and curated a data set for you. They have also set the winning criteria. So it's a competition, obviously. So some of the most famous competitions, as you may know, Netflix, right? The prize money for Netflix is $1 million, was $1 million. So they also have an incentive for you to solve that problem, right? And this is the crowdsourcing approach of solving an enterprise or a business problem, where you are kind of attracting the talents all over from all over the world. So solving real world problems is very, very important. And I'll in some time I will also go to Kaggle and show you some good, really good problems and the features it has. And after Google has acquired Kaggle, a lot different capabilities it has sort of built in. Okay. The second important piece, which as a researcher for me was very important, is this habit of cultivating this habit of cultivating reading research papers. Right. I'll tell you why it is important. You all must be by now comfortable reading blog posts, LinkedIn short videos, or like somebody's comments in Twitter, or things like that. So the world in terms of writing is becoming a little shorter. Nobody has the patience of reading a book, or nobody has the patience of reading a research paper. Like as I told you before joining this session, maybe you were quite excited and you wanted to you probably were thinking, okay, Karthik would start from the beginning and he will start to give his all life experience, but I made you to sort of wait for 2 minutes, right? You did some breathing exercise there. So this habit of being a little more patient and little more what you call curious in understanding the concepts which are complex needs a lot of reading. And the best place to start whenever you are struggling with maybe let's say understanding something are research papers. So I'll tell you one example and maybe you will understand what I mean here. And sometimes research papers are not so easy to understand than a blog post. Let me also put that kind of thought in your mind. So if you are going past the abstract and the introduction of a research paper, then you are really becoming a pro, right? But most of the people who have no experience reading research paper, they will probably drop off by reading the introduction and say the rest is complex. I'll also talk about some of these places where you can read a research paper much more what you call fruitfully, and how to do so. So some of the research papers, for example, Google's MapReduce, right? That has changed the world. How distributed computing happens, and how the PageRank algorithm that Google came out with, how they really established this distributed computing possible, by which all of these what you call their sophisticated algorithms were possible to run. So there is a good research paper released in 2005 on that topic. Read that. You will see how good they have written that paper. It is much more easy and what you call detailed in understanding than reading any blog post on MapReduce. Right? I'll maybe get into that a little more. Okay, so that's part two. So third is the talk on curiosity, right? A lot of people would have told you this, but maybe I am giving a little different perspective, and this is very common nowadays, so that's why I wanted to touch upon this. So think about this, right? A lot of you get excited when you see 90+% accuracy, isn't it? You sort of jump off your table and then say, oh, I got 90% accuracy, right? In an evaluator's mind, right, or I would say a person who is little more curious and experienced in this data science field, that person is actually not so happy if he gets, let's say, 90% accuracy in first shot, right? Why? Machine learning or building any models for that sake is a continuous process of experimentation. So you probably start with the basic fundamental baseline model and you go all the way to, let's say, applying some sophisticated deep learning model to get to that 99% accuracy. And even maybe 99 in that case is not possible. So when you put a focus on getting 99% accuracy, most often I have observed that you have done something wrong. Okay, most often you may have done a really good job and got that. But most often I've seen people getting into that trap of getting 90% accuracy. Whereas if you are able to explain a data point, let's say using a simple box plot is a powerful visualization and I like a lot more than just putting the summary statistics in numbers. So a box plot gives you a understanding that generates questions, right? That generates further conversation. And that's what I call a simple box plot would kind of trigger curiosity rather than suspicion. So don't put your work under suspicion, but put your work in a way that somebody when reads it have more questions and is wanting to connect with you. What have you done and how did you get to this particular whatever solution? Okay, and the final piece, focusing on the journey, not the destination. What do I mean? It's not about what kind of solution you came out with. You may have applied all the fancy computer vision, deep learning, reinforcement learning, or some of the best XGBoost kind of machine learning models. But that's not important. The most important part is, are you able to articulate the problem you are solving? That's your step one, to all the way to show people what kind of exploratory analysis you did, and then you finally reached a certain state where you say, okay, this is my model which is now going to solve one of the problems this industry is facing or this society is facing or my organization is facing, right? So some of the best works in today's deep learning world, you might have already been hearing that AI is going to replace radiologists, right? They are becoming better than radiologists. So computer vision has sort of advanced so much that it can read an X-ray, it can read a CT and give you predictions whether somebody has something, whether it is about detecting diabetic retinopathy or let's say detecting tuberculosis, or in today's context, even the on the early stages of COVID spread, right? The coronavirus spread. So all of that is made possible by the kind of AI people are building. But what led them to that destination, right? They were not focusing on day one to replace radiologists, right? That wasn't their focus. Wasn't their focus to get, let's say, the 99% accuracy mark. What they were doing is solving a problem. I'll tell you one example in this case. So there is this company called Qure.ai, Qure.ai. So in the early stages of their venture into this field, they went into a lot of partnership with government and uh, took their devices and took their solution to the rural part of India. And in these rural part of India, just imagine that if a doctor advised you to get a X-ray done to check for tuberculosis, the results would not come anywhere earlier than 2 days, right? So what Cure really did with their portable device, they went on to these small villages and districts, did this scans with the devices they had. Like these are some mobile cameras, by the way, and the results were instant. They were then able to refer some of these last stage cases to district hospitals, and they were able to get the treatments instead of waiting for 2 days. So this is the kind of problem people are solving, and this is what I talk about, the journey. How did they really reach where they finally sort of right now in? Okay, so I'll stop here for a while if there are any questions.
Guys, if there are any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask Karthik.
Yeah, otherwise I'll sleep.
Yeah.
It's early morning. Okay.
No questions, I guess,
No
Karthik.
questions yet. Okay, great. We'll do the breathing exercise when you feel sleeping. Okay. So do let me know in
Yeah,
any
sure.
case. Okay, let's see next. All right, so this is what another question, gray atom sort of. Okay, there are some responses. Okay, we have some questions actually. So Harshil is asking, can you share a few websites where we can read some research papers? Yes, I'll do that. How should we approach Kaggle for a real world problem for beginning? Yeah, I'll answer both these questions just after this slide. Okay, Rohit and Harshil. I'll build a little bit perspective and then we'll go there. Okay, so first of all, what are the qualities, right? So far we talked about what is actually a portfolio, or how do we build a portfolio project. Obviously, I told you to look at real world problems, read research papers, focus on the journey, don't be super excited by 90% accuracy, right? But to talk about the qualities, there are, as I said, and this kind of also will go back with the earlier things that I've said. One, I'll start a little from bottom to up there. So here we talk about whenever you want to, let's say, showcase your work, and you have done, let's say, a brilliant project, you have chosen the right real-time problem, and you have also kind of got the outcome in terms of, let's say, a good model that you built. But often you will feel that, okay, this is done by someone else already, right? There is nothing unique or different about this thing. So why should I be like bothering writing something, or maybe writing a blog post, or maybe sharing this work, right? So that's the kind of a dilemma a lot of you get when you think about, okay, now how do I show my work to someone? Okay, so I'll talk about a couple of techniques to be able to do so in coming slide. But the most important part of a good portfolio project is to have that uniqueness and quality, even if you are copying the work from someone else's, right? And let me not use this word copy here, right? There is a beautiful word in the world of research that we call reproducible work or reproducible research. So what is a reproducible research? If I write today a research paper and I hand it over that research paper to you, I put my code and data in GitHub. Are you able to reproduce that entire work and get the results that I've got? Right? If I am doing such a work, that's when I call I'm doing the justice to the field of science or data science, wherever I am putting my work. Right? Why? Because somebody will pick that up, and this is the philosophy of all open source projects as well. Somebody will pick that work from where you left and will improvise. Correct? And this is the most important part when it comes to doing something in data science. You definitely get a lot of code from online. A lot of people, experts, non-experts, have done enough coding and written enough blog posts for you to pick up. But that's just the inspiration. You should just start from there. Don't mindlessly copy, but reproduce the result. Correct? And after you reproduce the result, then starts your real work. What do I do to improvise on top of it? So I'll talk about some of these ways to reproduce and what you call do something on top of it. So I'll take you through these papers with code where you can find hundreds of research paper which comes with GitHub repo or something of the sort, which gives you also the code, not just the theory behind the code. Okay. And the second most important part, somebody will judge the quality of your project by not the one or two blog posts that you have done, but they will judge by the fact that you have written these 10 blog posts and all of it got like super likes, right? And all of it has some really relevant content. So just don't stop by writing one blog or tweeting or resharing somebody's else work in LinkedIn or Medium. and then feel very good about, okay, you have done now 5 tweets and 6 reshares in LinkedIn. That's not a performance metric for you. So if you really want to challenge, say that I've written this 12 blocks in over a period of 24 months. That's something you should be more proud of. Okay, I'll talk about how do we write the best Medium post and LinkedIn post. And then comes the most important part, as I was saying in the beginning as well. What inspired you to take that up? This is important for multiple reasons. One is obviously I am an enthusiast and I want to check out how these machine learning stuff really works. So I can rather pick any problem, right? But if I truly believe in solving a problem, then I would also want to answer why. Okay, so for example, I truly believe and I truly connect with this world of medical diagnostics, where a lot of deep learning problems are today being solved. So I see deep learning problems which can identify cancer cells from a skin tissue. I know deep learning algorithms which can classify a normal lung versus a tuberculosis lung using an X-ray or a CT scan. There are people who are analyzing the pathological slides, right? You know, you go for a blood test, whenever your pathologist will take your blood samples, they will go back to the laboratory, do some sort of a mix in a slide, a glass slide, put it in a machine or manually look it through a microscope to count your RBCs, WBCs, and all the other proteins or something like that, right? Now that's possible to do using deep learning. Deep learning can scan the glass slide where your blood samples are put in with some chemical mix, and they can count the number of RBCs, WBCs in that one slide, right? So that's becoming possible now. And there are now models which can get the image of your eyeballs, right? And predict whether you have the symptoms for diabetic retinopathy. This is one of the leading research work being done by one of the hospital chains in southern India called Arvind Eye Hospital, in collaboration with Google. So Google has really set a benchmark on detecting diabetic retinopathy. So these are the works that inspires me. So if I do anything in this, my why is very clear to me, and the rest that follows is to kind of just build on that work, come out with a really good blog post or sort of results. And I am still trying and I'm still learning. So you have to identify your why sooner or later. If you get that, the biggest advantage you will have in any job interview or any place where you want to talk about, you have a story which is deeply connected to you, right? And this is not going to come easy, right? Nobody, it's not that everybody thinks about all the time solving for the social problems or solving for some of the biggest problems in the world. But if somehow you are truly able to say that this is my why, this is why I want to get into data science, it will take you a long way through, right? It will take you a long way. It will not give up in the journey. You will not say that this is too tough for me or this is something that I don't want to do. If you have your why, it will take you miles before you sort of say, okay, I want to switch to something else if you don't like. All right. So I will once again stop for questions and I will now answer the others. Okay, so I have some similar questions. So Deep is asking, would you give some advice if there is no code available for papers? Yeah, sure. So let's focus our attention out of this slide now for a while. I'll stop sharing my screen for a while and I'll open up some okay, let me now show you. Okay, so let me just. So I'll try to answer three different questions which I've got. So one is from Harshil, who is asking, can you share few websites where we can read good research papers? So that's what I'm going to share now. And Rahul is asking, how do we approach a Kaggle problem? And then Deep is wanting to know, if there are no codes, then how do we approach or read, let's say, a research paper? Okay, so let me just show you first some examples for the first two. I'll reshare my screen. Okay, so I'll start with this. So this is one of the brilliant works I have so far seen in the world of research, where somebody has really took the effort of collating and obviously this platform called Papers with Code is in itself a huge effort in terms of solving a real world problem, right? Why? Because they have not just curated all these by manually picking up some of these best research papers and their code, but rather they would have written some data science algorithm or built a solution around it to scrape, let's say, all the research papers from different sources and put a very good structure to it, like the paper link and the code link. And these are all available in the public forum. So you see here, the moment I land in the website, the paper on Bertology meets biology, right? So this is BERT, as you might know, these are some of these, the most famous language model, right? Released by Google in recent days, and it has got a lot of attention now. And somebody is trying to apply that in biology. So, right, so this gives me instant motivation if I want to start with something new. Then you have some convolution neural networks, so people who really like deep learning now, something like text attack. So it, when I read these sort of intrigue, it's very intriguing for me to sort of really say, can I jump onto it something? Can I jump onto this today? And I'm very sure that not many would have started writing about these topics, because these are research papers. It will take some time to get into mainstream, right? And I normally refer to this what you call the gap between industry and academia. Academia are very keen in producing research paper day in and day out, but the time it takes to reach to the industry where the real applications are really found is like very long. It takes a lot of time to reach there. Okay, so you see a lot of topics. So you just have to key in your search term here, and then I think you should be able to find. So for example, if I want to read all the papers on generative adversarial, maybe let's say active learning, and you see here a lot of papers have come on that topic, some in signal processing, some in uh, adversarial properties, some on scene synthesis, a lot, right? So the good thing about this, as I said already, I'll first go to the paper. You can choose whichever way you are more comfortable. So either you go to paper, read it, and take a nap, because papers are actually going to give you that, and then come back and execute your code. Or if you want to be excited from the time, from the first look at the problem, you just say, this is my GitHub repo. Immediately get this, set up your environment. This is done in TensorFlow. So you will reproduce the result first, and then you go back to the research paper. So you have to find out which works for you. So if you are a hardcore researcher, then you probably like reading paper first before you do reproduce the work. But some people need the visualization to read the papers. So the visualization would be possible if you reproduce this code. So I can see here that this is a GitHub repo. I can just fork it. reproduce the results, and I should be able to get the results back. So this is a very good one because I know exactly what I need to do, and they've given me a clear instruction to do so. Okay, I hope Harshil, I answered your question. So start with papers with code, and then maybe you take some of the other places which I can show you. So let me also show you this. Okay, there are some questions. Okay, so some other places to find out really good research papers. So this is another place where I like a lot. So this is a repository which is free and an open source archive created by Cornell University, which gives you a lot of research papers in a very diverse set of fields, right? Not just uh, data science, but some of you maybe, let's say, from mathematics or physics background. There are good number of research papers out there. So you just search any of the keywords that you may have, and you are likely to find hundreds or maybe thousands of research paper, right? And these are all available free of charge, like there are no costing to this. So I like sometimes this platform better than Google Scholar, which I used to use in my early days of research works. Okay, so feel free to go through this and see what kind of papers you can find. Okay, now let me take probably one paper to answer this question. Sometimes that you feel, let's imagine for a moment that the paper has no uh, what you call code. So in that case, what do you do? Let me just see if I can find a good research paper. Okay, so something on reinforcement learning, something on single image manipulation. Okay, these are some. So you see, I started to feel little uneasy because more nowadays I am more a guy who works in industry than in research. So in my early days of research work, I used to find these topics little what do you call interesting. Now it seems like I'm too away from that. So you need the time and energy also to be able to read through such. And I'm telling you, don't be intimidated by the title of the paper. It is deliberately kept very complex, right? But when you read through, you may feel that okay, these are some fundamental ideas that I know I've learned from machine learning somewhere or the other. Maybe I'll just pick up this one. Yeah, don't expect me to sort of explain to you on the fly what this paper does. It needs a lot of work and energy and time to spend on the paper and then understand what it is doing. Okay, so okay, I just see that the title looks something which I can't relate to at all, but all I get is some keywords that it is about segmentation, it has some deep learning, and it has something on smoothness priors. So some words I could understand. Maybe if you are new to data science, you will not understand the words here, but you may just go by the English words that it has. Okay, this is about something globally, this is about something optimal. So this is so I'm not sort of exaggerating here. This is how in anybody's minds when they read a research paper, things comes out, but it needs a little more patience to go through in details what it really talks about. So if I go here and spend a little time in reading the abstract, so maybe I may, so far I have not understood much, okay, from the title. So let me spend some time in reading the abstract. It says automated surface segmentation is important and challenging in many medical image analysis. So you see here, I'm trying to connect now. So it's about image analysis, and specifically, it's very clear now that it's about medical image analysis, and they are talking about segmentation. So just imagine, right? So in uh, the world where people are building these AI algorithms for radiologists, So scanning a X-ray or a CT scan would not just be a matter of classification, whether it is a TB case or not. It is also about the insight you give it to a radiologist. So what a radiologist will do, he or she will read the X-ray and say, okay, this is the portion where I see there is a bulk, right? I suspect that the TB has now started spreading. So it is important to do segmentation also in that image and be able to come out with the contours where, let's say, a doctor can perform surgery. It could be similar for a cancer as well. So this says that this particular paper is about automated surface segmentation, and it's a very, very challenging problem. They are kind of emphasizing that in the very first line, and then they go on to kind of talk about something else. So what they say is recent deep learning based methods have been developed for various object segmentation tasks. Yes, we know that, and a lot of people have done something on this. So what are they doing differently is what we need to understand from the abstract. So they say most of them are classification based approach, as I just right now was saying. Example, the UNet, which predicts the probability of being target object or background for each voxel. I don't understand what that means. But the next part they say is one problem of those methods is lacking of topology guarantee for segmented objects. So now it's getting complex, and usually post processing is needed to infer the boundary surface of the object. So in this paper, they have come out with a novel model based on CNN. So nothing new here, right? Convolutional neural network that they are using, followed by a learnable surface smooth blob is proposed to tackle the surface segmentation. Okay, I will not spend reading the rest of it, but the last part which is important for me is the experiments were carried out on the spectral domain optical coherence tomography. This needs a, I think I can't read it in one breath. That's how complex this entire term is. But it tells me the source of probably the scans that they would have taken. Okay, so they have done it on this SDOCT. So I think these are some forms of the machines giving you some images, right? So what I can understand so far from this is more than just classifying, let's say, an image into tuberculosis versus no tuberculosis. They are kind of focusing on how do we come out with better segmentation approaches on top of, let's say, a image which is typically a medical image, whether it's X-ray or a CT scan, and on top of it they're talking about some novel methods wherein they are overlaying or combining the CNN network with some topology based segmentation, right? I really don't connect to that for now. And the data source is this. So if I am an experienced person, I may be able to also understand what does a spectral domain optical coherence tomography is, right? These are some type of scans. And also they're talking about the next data that they get is the intravascular ultrasounds. I think many of you might be knowing. So if I'm comfortable in using these kind of data sources, and most of the time you will see the data that you are given, let's say in a popular platform like Kaggle, they would have already converted that into a PNG or a JPEG for you to be able to do something. Okay, so now coming to the question of how do I now reproduce this result? So I know this is one of the most probably you will look at that this is quite complex to reproduce, and the ideas presented in this will take you many days or many years. And that's true that for one, there are no source codes available. It's hard to reproduce. But the way we used to do in earlier days is to go a little deeper now and start to read about all the introduction materials, right? So one way, so first way to find out whether I can reproduce or not. So when I say a research paper is not just somebody's work. It is also about what somebody has already done, and they start to put that also in the introduction. So for example, they refer you a paper here called Fully Convolutional Neural Network, and they will have some more references for people who have built these UNets, right? And there are, in the entire paper, you will find hundreds of references. So one possibility could be that this work is not reproducible, but some of the references that they have given will lead you to reproduce some of their works. So that's number one. Second, when you want to reproduce a complex idea, start from the basic building block. So if not this research paper, then what? You can just start with CNN. You can take an image, whether it's a medical image or any other image, you can get hundreds of those images online. Google it and you will get it. Why can't you build a simple CNN model on 10 images? So that gives you the comfort zone of saying, okay, now I understand how CNN works. So that's your step one towards understanding this paper. So if you understand CNN, then their approach is little sophisticated than that. So you may have to go to the mathematics behind what they are proposing novel, or you may have to read some more research paper. So it happens so that when you read one research paper, you will sort of go in a direction of reading 10 more. And as a result, after 6 months or maybe let's say 1 year, when I'm assuming that you have that much of time, you will actually be able to come out with something more useful in terms of reproducing that work or maybe producing your own work. And having said that, not all research papers are reproducible. So that's the biggest problem in the research community as well, which we talk quite often, that research work should from now onwards be more shareable, more reproducible. Otherwise, that research is of no use. So you should be very, very good in filtering the good versus the bad research work. Okay, now let me jump on to Kaggle. So I'll stop here for some questions if anyone has. Okay, some more questions here. I'll talk about Kaggle in a while, but let me see if there are any other questions. So Yagna is asking, when I'm searching for real world data use case, I felt it is easier to find and also personally come up with a CV real life data when compared to non-CV. Okay, if I would not want to start with deep learning but traditional ML, how do we approach collect real life data focusing on data extraction? Okay, sure, that's a good question and I'll answer that in a while. And I think you have led me also to a very right discussion point, that don't start with deep learning. I know that field is now very exciting, and a lot of people who do post their LinkedIn videos. I know you must be intrigued by that they must be shooting themselves in camera and then they are pointing their two fingers and it's detecting that it's two, right? Though it's very exciting, the deep learning world is growing fast and a lot of benchmarking data sets have now come up. But it's a good practice to always start from a model which is much more simpler and much more easy to explain. For example, start with logistic regression for classification. Don't go directly for CNN, even though you know CNN is the state of the art, right? So it's a good practice to do. So I will tell you where you can get such data sets, and Kaggle has actually all. So maybe you may have your answer there. But before I go a little more into Kaggle, I'll also want to show you some of these work that is going on in Kaggle and particularly around the COVID situation. You should be able to see here a lot of posts and updates on this. So what Kaggle community has really started doing after the COVID started to spread and a lot of research publications started coming up. There is a huge crowdsourcing approach in Kaggle where people have started uh, putting their efforts towards making sure that they are able to identify some of the best research works going on. So when I say research work, this is on the medical diagnosis and also to find out the vaccines. So there are hundreds of papers coming in, and with the COVID kind of becoming a world pandemic, it is important that you give your due attention to any of the research works happening, let's say in a very far more remote corner of Israel versus a developed nation in San Francisco Bay Area in US. So how do you really mine those research papers to find out what kind of papers are really good? So they have done a really good work in Kaggle community uh, through these work and or you can also contribute if you sort of have some basic idea of how do I apply NLP kind of methods in doing so. So they have come out with many findings, and they have extracted hundreds of papers which uses or which kind of talks about vaccine, which talks about diagnosis, which talks about any research work in any set of patient somewhere, right? And then gives you some of these answers to the question, right? You can see that Kaggle COVID-19 summary table. So some of the key scientific questions are answered not just by some layman, but this is something coming from the research paper, right? So for instance, the presence of SARS-CoV-2 RNA in the feces of COVID-19 patients. So this is some paper, uh, and this is the question that somebody was asking. In the top, if you see persistence of the source, there they say, what do we know about viral shedding in stool? Right. So we so far have talked about COVID in terms of when you come in so close contact with someone, correct? And through the air droplets or the water droplets from your mouth sort of getting into some surface, and somebody gets in contact and sort of get the coronavirus if you have, right? That's the kind of research so far you have seen in all the scientific research. So this guy is asking, what do we know about the viral shedding in stool, right? So is there any viral stain kind of left in stool, and can that cause the spread? So imagine, right, a lot of people in India kind of live in slum areas where sanitation and everything is not so good. Is that possible that it can spread through that stool, and maybe they are nearby some of these what you call drainage or something like that, and can that also spread COVID? So this is a very important question, and you see, to answer this, a layman cannot do so. Neither a one expert sitting somewhere in Israel can. So what Kaggle, this particular AI-powered literature review has really done is to be able to answer such key scientific questions. And imagine how quick and easy. This is only giving me 12 papers, right? Otherwise, I would have read I would have got some 20,000 or so papers, and who will read and come out with the answers? So scientific research will slow down. So you see the power that the community-based approach here in Kaggle is kind of going through. So the power that they bring in mining the information and coming out with the appropriate results. So it's only 12 papers that I can see here right now. And if I want to really get my study in one of my medical labs to study this question, I can immediately jump into these 12 papers and sort of get started. You see the power that we will be able to sort of get. So I just wanted to put this word so for you to know that what kind of real world problems such community kind of platform can solve. So this is not about $1 million from Netflix. Obviously, that's sort of very interesting, and my life can change if I can get $1 million. But this is about saving somebody else's life, right? So this is the sort of why I talk about, why I am doing what I am doing. Okay, now coming back a little bit back on a general note, what Kaggle really gives you. So see, so this is the notion that many have, that Kaggle is only about solving this high-end problem posted by some big organization, but it's not the case. If you look at any of these notebooks and kernel, right? So obviously you can first choose a data problem, and from that problem you can go down to read about all the what do you call notebooks and kernels that they share. Maybe I can show you that first. It will give you some understanding of okay, let me go into some problem here. Okay, Alaska to image tag analysis. So whether a image contains some hidden images. So this is a typical problem from a network or a computer security standpoint, whether I have a stack in a given image. So this is a problem. Okay, so this is a competition rather hosted by Troyes University of Technology, and it has a good cash price. So you see, first of all, the problem is very clear. What they want you to do. So the file you downloaded may contain hidden messages that aren't part of a regular content. So that means it's an image data set which contains some hidden, which has a stack, and they expect you to be able to solve this problem by maybe extracting what the stack is really about. So other good thing about that is it also tells you what they expect. So they expect you to, in order to focus on the reliable detection of stack with an emphasis on low false alarms, right? So they are very clear that submissions are evaluated on the weighted AUC. To complete the weighted AUC, each region of the ROC curve is weighted according to their chosen parameters. So this is, so you have to read through what this evaluation criteria means. So if you're new to data science, you may have some difficulty in understanding what this means, but you need to be a little patient in terms of looking at the examples and looking at what you need to make this, whatever you will do in terms of building the model, on which metric you will be competing. And then there are timelines and prices. Okay, so far so good, but how do I get started, right? That's the question I had. So first of all, you look at the data, you get some understanding. So this is a image file, so you may definitely see a lot of JPEG files here. So these are all JPEG files. If I open up any one, okay, let me just go in here. And it's a huge repository. So this is a normal image. By looking at it, it is very hard very hard to sort of detect if there is any hidden message inside this image, right? That's what is a stack. And a steganography or a stack analysis is a huge field in the world of cybersecurity, right? If you are interested, maybe you can go a little more and see. And if there is a hidden message, it's possible that it's a virus code, or it is possible that it is somebody maliciously trying to get into your network and leaving a message or something like that. I don't know what is the real purpose of sending such stack embedded images. So looking at this data, now to answer how do I get started? So there are some brilliant folks who would have already started doing something for you. And this is the power of doing anything in Kaggle. So you will see that a lot of data scientists and researchers around the world who will participate in this competition, they first give their perspective. So when they give their perspective, it's easy for you to get started learning from them. So I can see that somebody got some 122 upvotes. And if I want to get started with whatever solution I have here, I think it's going to be easy. So see, the person is now explaining really very well what this problem is. So far I had only rough idea, but I think the person is explaining me Stegno libraries, something about this image, some PyTorch preparation, model architecture, training, submission. So I can't I think expect anything more than that to get started. Do you see some code? The moment I see code, I get excited and I want to get started immediately on this. Okay, so it doesn't stop here. So now the next question you may ask is, okay, it seems like a good work, but how do I get this done in my own, environment? I don't have a GPU machine, or I don't have a large, a supercomputer to sort of train this model. So don't worry, this is the best feature I have so far found here. So all I'm going to do is copy this code posted in the forums of Kaggle and now start creating my own version, or at least first reproduce the work that the person has sort of posted here. You see here, so this is my own session. Just notice here, right? This is my own session. So I have my account in Kaggle and I am now editing this notebook. So either I can go one by one, just start running everything. It should work because the person has posted and many people have liked it. I can reproduce whatever she has done, right? And do some changes, modify the work, and maybe get my own version. So this problem of what you call not having a system in place is no more there. So I can just show you here. So this is using a GPU accelerator, and let me show you how much it gives you. So you have close to here 4 GB of disk space, which is sufficient because I'm not going to copy anything on the disk it gives me. And it has a very, very powerful RAM, 13 GB, and similar powerful GPU, right? That's more than enough for me to train, let's say, even some complicated models like Res 34 or ResNet 50. So those you don't know, these are some of these pre-trained models on ImageNet kind of a data set, which has a millions of images. So these such models are trained on millions of images, and it takes a lot of GPU memory. And I can, using this 15 GB GPU, I can actually train on that much of what you call data and complex model. And it gives you 30 hours a week, which is a good number of hours to train your models and go through many iterations. And the good part is you can save this version. Whatever changes you do, you save this version, you can come back and start working from where you left. Right? So those of you are saying, I need to buy a system to do this all, it's no more the case. It's all free. You can go here and then start doing. It's not about just copy and editing somebody else's notebook. You can go to Kaggle, create your own notebook and start from scratch. You don't need to have anybody else's work as well. Okay.
I would just like a few seconds to launch a short poll on the learner screens. Okay.
Okay, sure. Go ahead.
Guys, I'm launching a poll. It just says a couple of questions, won't take more than a few seconds. And I would like everyone to take it, all the learners. It's now on your screen, yeah. Thanks,
Can I
Karthik.
answer?
Yeah, Karthik, did you say something?
No, can I answer?
It's only for the learners, actually.
Okay.
Few more seconds, guys. Everyone take it. Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you for taking the poll. I'm ending the poll now. Karthik, you can continue.
Okay, great. So I'll read some of the responses on the chat.
Yeah.
What is this? So I hope I answered a little bit on how do we approach a research paper, how do we approach a Kaggle for real world. So as I said, Rohit, I believe you got some perspective now. You can actually look at a Kaggle, you can see these notebooks. So that's a good starter. Start from there, improvise on top of it, do your own research work also to come out with some new ideas and perspective. And I think you should be able to sort of get started with that. And it's not about just images. If you spend a little more time, okay, there are some other questions also on recommendation. So there is one question from Yagnath, Shivarama Krishnan. So any recommendations on focusing at a particular domain with all you have discussed now? Example, banking. While it's good to know what's happening around, bandwidth might be an issue. Yeah, that's you are right, Shiva. So see, specific to a domain, I'll talk about that a little bit. When you say specific to a domain, all that today matters with all these capabilities that data science is offering you is how well you understand the topics, the algorithms, the ideas behind these algorithms, and how well you are able to read the data, read a problem statement from a domain and convert it into a data problem, right? A lot of people talk about solving problem in business world, but not all the problems that a business kind of tells you is a data problem. So be aware of the fact that if, let's say, I have a banking what do you call banking system, right? So if somebody is asking me to solve a problem for a bank which can identify let's say robbery, right? It's a problem. Maybe it's the event rate is very low, but it's still a problem. And that problem is about some of these banks or ATMs kind of looted by goons, right? Can I solve that problem using data? Maybe yes, maybe no. I can put CCTV cameras, I can analyze that image, or maybe that video stream and alert the police about kind of saying that there is a suspicious activity, or can I pick up something more impactful? Correct. So when you go into a domain, first of all, that needs to be done is, without having any knowledge of data science, is to have the right problem in place to solve, which will have the highest impact. So robberies might be like once a year problem, but identifying the frauds in the banking transactions you get, that might be a bigger problem, right? So some of you must have seen these Netflix shows on Jamtara, I guess, if I recall the name right, where they talk about these banking frauds. They call you, they ask you your credit card and numbers and all that, and they do some transactions. How do we identify such fraudulent transactions? It's a big problem in banking industry. So do you want to solve that, or do you want to solve, let's say, a robbery problem? Right? So the impact for both is very different. And so you have to consciously choose. So when I talk about a domain, no matter where you are working in a banking industry or you are working in a healthcare industry, the type of problems are obviously very different, but the type of algorithms, the kind of techniques you use from data science, the kind of technology you have in data science are almost the same. So if you want to have a very specific focus to only banking, you have to identify a set of people whom you can collaborate with or whom you can be in a community. So this is the best approach I like to be able to solve problems, let's say in a given domain. So I'll go to Meetup. Okay, so this is how I do normally, and I may be lucky sometimes, I may not be. I go to meetups, I see if there are some interest groups around me who wants to work on banking. So Shiva, if you want to, let's say, start one, who stops you? You just say a event group, create a meetup here, gather all the folks who are working in banking industry and they are solving a data science problem. You have your place to start from. Then you will not hear all the noises around the world who are solving medical problems or who are solving some fraudulent stack analysis or something like that. But there are no predefined ways that you can start with a domain, and there are these forums. There might be forums, but you have to do some work to find it out. Okay, so Atul, hope I answered your question, Siva. So yes, Rohit, you might be right. 2611 also had some things like this, like a message hidden in an image. Atul is asking me, can you show the feature again? Okay, so the feature is simple to get. So I went on to look at a Kaggle competition like this. Okay, and inside the Kaggle competition, let me go to the Kaggle competition first. Okay, I'm running little short of time, so I may now want to switch back to the slides. I have a couple of important topics for you to know. I'll just show you this one, please. Okay. So this was a competition. I went into this, and then I saw a lot of notebooks here. So actually, you may be surprised to know that there are people who just do this notebook, and they also are some called kernel grandmasters in Kaggle. Right, a lot of people who are competition grandmasters, and there are a lot of people who are kernel grandmasters. So if you submit some of the best notebook consistently time and again, and you get to the top every time, chances are good that you can become a kernel. These are all called kernels. So these are some adjoining materials to the competition. So this is where I get to a kernel, which is nothing but a Python notebook. Okay, Jupyter notebook. All I have to do is edit my copy. Because I've already created a copy, it's saying edit my copy. Otherwise, if you're doing it for the first time, it will say copy and edit. You got that, Atul? Okay. Let me see. Okay, good. All right, so let me come back. Let me know if you guys are able to see my slides. Yes, no? No? Okay.
Karthik, Hello, Karthik, can you hear me?
Yes, let me reshare the screen. Yes, Vijay.
Yeah, Karthik, we have a hard stop at 9:30.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, I will take
yeah,
not more
max
than.
10, 9:40. Because we have another session at 10 with the same account. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, sure, sure. I got it. No
Yeah.
worries.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, so I think some of the stuff that I wanted to discuss in these slides, I've already given you some context. So getting started with a portfolio project, I've shown you just some examples. Go through it and also look at some of these research works which got real world implementation. So I always say that when you are creating a portfolio project and if you want to just go a little more than what you can actually do, also see if you can create something which somebody can use. So do visit, let's say, or do find out this paper called The Language of Fake News. And if you want to get started with this paper has a obviously GitHub repository. It all depends what kind of difficulty you want to choose. So you can start with such a big topic, or you can start with some of these data sets like IRIS data set. Go to the UCI machine learning repository, and there are so many data sets around it. So what these guys have really done is they have not just, so these are some of the MIT folks, they have not just done the paper and the code available. They also created a small website where you can go and paste your text and it will tell what part of the text is a fake news or what part of the text kind of resembles a fake news text. So they have created a small website around it and an API and all that. So if you want to go beyond just producing a work and talking about it in a blog, uh, this is a way. If you are, let's say, a software developer or you are good with creating such small APIs or piece, so that gives a better what you call visibility for your work to the outer world. Okay, so I think in a nutshell, I've already talked about this. So this is the kind of flow I normally describe. Writing a good medium publication is a right starter. So to write a good medium blog, let me give you just one piece of advice here. Don't try kind of attempt being like a J.K. Rowling types of a writer, right? I'll tell you my story. So when I got my opportunity to write a book, which was obviously a machine learning book, and I first stumbled upon this idea of saying, okay, I should demystify a lot of doubts and misconceptions that people have in data science and the field of machine learning. And I spent uh, kind of an inordinate amount of time on my chapter one because I was attempting to write something of a novel sort, and I thought I should be philosophical. I should be like clarifying everything in our chapter one and then go to the chapter two. Then something kind of an idea kind of seep into me, wherein I said, okay, I'm not writing a Harry Potter book here, right? I'm writing a technical book which needs to be technical in nature. So all I have to do is to focus on my area, focus on my expertise. So I can start by simply saying this is how a machine learning model works. So that's a good chapter to write. Not like how machine learning was invented and write a story about it, let's say going all the way to 100 years back. That's a book that maybe not many would be interested in. So you have to be very, very clear what you are writing. So don't spend too much time thinking, is my English good or is my language good? Is my sentence formation is good? Am I writing like J.K. Rowling's? No, that's a very, very bad benchmarking. You should be aware that it should be technically sound and it should be good enough in terms of its novelty and in terms of its uniqueness. And there are some other platforms I've written here, so go and check it out. Dev.to is more for these technical people who are developers, as in back from a background. GitHub Pages and somewhere else. Posting your code today, I prefer more than GitHub, Kaggle notebooks, because there I find a lot of traction. People are actually coming in and spinning off these notebooks and immediately starting to work on that. And this is a new trend that I'm seeing, posting short videos, right? In LinkedIn, you must have seen a lot of people posting some of their videos, whether a small video clip or a voice, saying what is that they have done and showing the demonstration. So if you don't want to create an entire website or something, at least you can show a small demonstration of your work, what you have accomplished. But if you want to be little more bold and little more what you call gather a lot of big audience and you believe truly that you have done a great work, then also host a webinar. You can today start a Zoom session for 45 minutes and send it to first your friends, and they will send it to their friends, and maybe you may get an audience of 5 or 6 people. Post that video in LinkedIn or YouTube or somewhere else so that people know that you conducted such a webinar. So nobody, it's not that only once Grey Atom kind of invites me, I will speak and then get these kind of videos. I can do it myself, right? And also do some of these live demos as well. And if you truly believe in your idea, you like it a lot, then see if you can publish it in some good research works. That's the hard part. Okay, so if you have some time, I can talk about that little later. And these are some big suggestions for you. Creating your personal brand is very, very important, and you should have this why answered for you, right? Because that's how people will remember you. So if you have answered your why very well, then you will know that slowly people will say, okay, Mr. X is an expert in computer vision, or he has all these beautiful blogs written in CNN for CNN models, right? You should be known for something. So maybe you want to choose a theme, or you want to keep it a bit diverse, but somewhere people should talk about, okay, Mr. X is famous. He writes something about things which I want to read. And then in your communication, don't try to be too elaborate, but crisp and clear is the word I use. Having a lot of code helps, and being very clear about what you are trying to convey with the thing that you share. So it's not about more on how much you have done in terms of writing big codes and doing some fancy models, but it's more important how clearly and how crisply you are putting it across. So somebody when they pick it up, they know that it is useful to them. It's not about a long and lengthy blog post. Okay, and this is one of the most important thing that I always say to everyone: let your work speak, right? Than your resumes. So as I always point out, if I Google your name, right, I should be at least getting 1 or 2 good blog posts. And not that this is a criteria for hiring, but it's always going to help you if you become famous in a Google search, right? Then having a lot of text written in a resume. People have no patience for reading a big resume of 5-6 pages, but they may read your blog, which may take them half an hour. They are fine because that they read something interesting. Something very similar for LinkedIn post as well. So when you do a LinkedIn post, it's not that your friends and colleagues are looking at it. It's also where recruiters are. So if a recruiter finds a good, what do you call, a post in LinkedIn, and they somehow come and read all the comments, people liking it, it gets popular, you then really have that recruiter looking at your profile, right? That's better than a resume. Okay, so finally, these are some of the what do you call responses or the experience I get from talking to people and people reaching out to me. A lot of people who want to get into data science today are really putting themselves as an enthusiast. So I read their LinkedIn post and their titles, they are saying I'm an AI enthusiast or I'm a machine learning enthusiast. All I want to say there is that's not enough, right? So if you say you are an enthusiast, show me what you have done. What have you done so far to understand the field, or kind of what have you done so far to really work or kind of get an opportunity to work in this field, right? So you have to rebrand yourself maybe a little, right? Just an enthusiast is not enough in my mind. It's just an interest or an intent, right? You have the intent to get into this field, but you have not so far not got anything for me to be interested in getting you, let's say, in our job profile. And this is and the second piece which I want to emphasize a lot is don't be too casual, right? When you reach out to someone in LinkedIn, it's important that you give a good narrative of what you have done so far in your career. So at least writing a paragraph or 2 is definitely a plus. I don't even reach out to people or kind of ping back with a response if they say, hi, I'm looking for a job, or hi, Karthik. I've seen people who have just pinged me saying, hi, Karthik. LinkedIn is not a WhatsApp. You should not do that. That's the biggest mistake anyone should do, right? Because if you do that, you will lost that person. He will not reply back. So you have to give a good summary of what you are doing, what you have done, what you have accomplished, and if that interests me or any recruiter for that matter, they will revert back. And sometimes genuinely they don't have anything to revert back, so they will kind of hesitate to sort of reply because maybe they don't have any openings. And this is the most important part, is to keep your target audience in mind. So a lot of people, this have been said and said in many forums, and maybe you know this by now probably. Folks don't look at LinkedIn profiles of company, any organization, and the kind of job postings they have there. Read some of the Amazon's job descriptions, right? And you know exactly what an organization is doing. So if you want to be, let's say, in Amazon, you don't have to be told by anyone that do this or that. Go to the LinkedIn profile of Amazon, look at all the jobs they have posted and look at the job description. You know what you have to do to get into Amazon, right? Likewise for any other company. So that's the best way to find out what jobs works for me and what skills I have to sort of get on to, or kind of what you call make myself better on. And finally, so as we have this popular or a famous phrase in businesses where we say execution eats strategy for breakfast. So today you may have had a good session, or maybe you didn't like whatever I said, but end of the day, you may make a good plan out for your career. But if you don't get that to the execution, then I think sooner or later your strategy would be somewhere in some big papers or a file, or maybe hidden in some place. So you may not have a fruitful outcome as you would have expected when you made that strategy, right? So really, the message is that get on to your work, start showing it on different forums, places, and generate a brand, a personal brand for you. More the audience you have, better you are placed. All right, that's it. So I have a few minutes left. Let me see if I can answer some questions. Okay, you can visit my profile, Ramesh. I have all the links for my books. My LinkedIn profile, you can get by typing my big name, Karthik Ramasubramanian. I have a unique name, so it helps. Or you can go to my first. This is my LinkedIn profile. Okay, do we have any other questions? We have some time, if I think some 4 minutes or so.
Yeah, not a problem. We can extend it by 10 minutes. So,
okay, great. So you got 10 minutes, guys. So if you have any questions.
guys, you can either type or you can also unmute yourself and speak with Karthik directly. We've got 10 minutes. I think we should utilize it for effectively for Q&A. So any questions, kindly shoot.
Rohit, I keep writing a lot about my work. So I think there is a good description of my work at Mahindra and Mahindra as well on my LinkedIn profile, if you may want to read about that. Some of the other works might take a lot of effort and energy. I think I've taken one session in one of the meetups of Grey Atom as well, talking about some of my work. So just to very quickly show you some more platforms, if there are no questions coming in, which I have found recently, and I think it will definitely be helpful in some way or the other. So I was talking about this community, right, where you can be part of. One big piece in that is this finding I had. So there is this new platform I've been part of called Jovian. Let me share my screen and I'll tell you why it is important. Some of you are asking for. I've given you that. Let me share my screen. So this is a platform I recently sort of landed into, and this is called Jovian, Jovian, and I have similar to GitHub, but little more designed specifically for what you call data science, machine learning, and specifically deep learning. So there are a lot of notebooks for you to get started. All of these are in PyTorch. Okay, so I'll also ping you this. Okay, I pinged you the link. Oops. Yeah, I pinged you the links. So what it does is one thing which I care a lot when we do any big data science project is that, let's say there are five people working in my team, and all of them are focusing on solving that data science problem, right? That is given to us from the business and the one which we have formulated. So in all those problems, it is important that we collaborate. We collaborate on ideas. We collaborate on whatever work we are doing. So for instance, if let's say I was solving one problem for diabetic retinopathy, and I was trying my hands whether I can build this or not. What is more important for me than just, let's say, having a good notebook somewhere posted so that we can collaborate and we can work together as a team. On top of it, it is also important that I can record my experimentations. So let me show you what I mean by that. So you see here, whenever I create a version, right, and Jovian helps me a lot, and the code is there for you to be able to do so. You will see that there are different versions of my notebook. This is a very, very rare thing that we do today. You normally don't keep your notebooks organized, right? And there are so many iterations that goes behind in making sure you can come up with the best model. So for example, hyperparameters. There are so many hyperparameters, right? And you see here the different iterations that I did. And from each of the iteration, you will have some different values. Sometimes I will say 0.1 for the grad clip to sometimes I will say 0.2. Here in this case, it's all same. But the most important part is I'm able to keep track of how each version of my notebook is improving my validation score or training loss. You see here my validation score and training loss in different versions. So I know, okay, this version is the one which gave me the best validation score. Let me open up this notebook, right? And the good part about this platform is it gives you this connect directly to either run your notebook on Kaggle that I was showing you earlier, or Google Colab, or there is something called Binder. It's again the same service that Kaggle provides. So if I, let's say, show you, I have shown you the Kaggle one. Let me show you Google Colab. So this has been there for some time now. So if I just say run my notebook in Google Colab, and Google Colab also provides you some good amount of compute power. So once your notebook loads, you can just try experimenting with the notebook and see how it works. All right, so here you go. So now I can run each of these steps and see how it works. And then finally, when you are satisfied, just go and commit your work and you should see that. So there's an excellent, what do you call, excellent platform for you to collaborate, excellent platform for you to follow up. And I think the founders of Jovian are also conducting some good online courses in collaboration with some other platforms. So if you are interested in some of those also, you can participate. So it's a good way to organize your work in a single repository. Okay, some questions here. Sorry, drop off. Any recommendations for banking domain related ML? I don't have a specific recommendation, Shiva, but as I suggested, because I am not from a banking domain, so I have not got into any big, what do you call, or looking at what banking domain folks are doing in ML AI. All I know is of some basic problems that they are trying to solve. But as I suggested, if you would really want to understand such things like what people are doing in banking domain. One is to Google it and find out what kind of problems people are solving in the banking industry. Second, if you would like to create a close group of people or a community, see if you can organize online meetups, or when situations get better after COVID, maybe a one-on-one interactions with them. Try to gather your own set of people with whom you can interact, or look at Kaggle and become a part of a Kaggle competition which is about banking problems. Right? Spend some time in Kaggle, look at all the current competitions and also the past competitions, see what kind of discussions there people have, and you may also find a good problem statement to solve. Okay. Sarah saying, what are the data hygiene practices you would advise a beginner to begin? So as I said, Sarah, one of the most important part of doing data science is to be able to organize your work. So first of all, if you have hundreds of Jupyter notebooks, one platform that I showed you, the Jovian.ml. Jovian.ml will help you to organize all your, if you want to put your work in a public forum and you're okay with that, and be careful if you want to put it private, then you can have the setting option chosen accordingly. So it will be private to you. So such platforms are coming up in future, and I am seeing that it is going to boom in coming days, where you will see many folks coming out with such collaboration platforms. So first of all, you should see that all your versions of the notebook are organized in one single place, and each version should have a metadata for it. So as I was showing you this here, right? So I was showing you here that I did a lot of experiments, and out of these experiments, I've created 5 versions of my notebook, and each version of the notebook, I did something to make sure that the score goes up. So this is one of the most important parts. So when you want to write a blog, or you want to write, let's say, about your journey in a blog post, this is what will help you. How did you achieve the 75% validation score? Not how, you saying that I got 75% validation score is not enough, but you have to really walk through people what you did that got you that jump. So just imagine, if you ask me what did I do to go from 0.54 validation score to, let's say, 0.575, it's a big jump, right? Maybe it's like some magic trick that I did there. So I'm very curious if somebody can tell me what did you do, Karthik, to kind of get from 0.54 to, let's say, 0.75. That's how you generate interest in your own work. So that's very important. Start to organize your work in this fashion. Record all the parameters that you get out of your machine learning model or any deep learning model that you build, and that will immensely help you. All right, I think I'm time's up.
Yeah. Thanks, Karthik. Thank you guys for attending the session. Thank you, Karthik, for the wonderful session. I'm sure everyone liked it. Guys, I've shared the feedback form with you a couple of times, sharing with you the link again for the last time. Kindly fill it, and it's very important. Thank you, guys. Karthik, are we good to leave the meeting?
Yeah, I am good.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. Enjoy your Sunday.
Right,
Karthik, have a nice Sunday.
Yeah. Take care, all of you. Take care. Bye bye. All the best.
Yeah. Bye, guys. Please fill the feedback form. I'm ending the meet now.